aspirants, welcome to DICS in the series ethics_simplified @DICS. Yes, in the last session we had discussed the attitude and the types of attitude, moral as well as political. Yes, now we wish to discuss this topic, that is social influence and persuasion. In this particular topic, first we will interlink this topic with our last session. In our last session what we had covered was attitude, where after that we will see varieties of attitude change which shall further lead to what? Social influence and persuasion. Yes, attitude, in the topic of attitude we had studied, yes, that what is the structure, what is the function, what is the definition of attitude, and later we dwelled on to what? Moral and political attitudes. But today we shall be discussing the varieties of attitudinal change. The varieties of attitudinal change, actually it was given by Herbert Kelman. Herbert Kelman gave these three different varieties of attitudinal change, right? When there shall be what? Change in the attitude of any individual, and then we shall link these varieties to the form of what? Form of attitude change, that is social influence and persuasion. If we looked at all the three possibilities of what? Attitudinal change, first would be what? Compliance. Compliance is nothing but when an individual publicly as well as privately, yes, if he agrees or not, right? If an individual publicly agrees, yes, why? Due to what? Some kind of maybe social force, some kind of influence, yes, but privately his opinion is dissenting with his public opinion, yes, this may result in what? Change in behavior, but not in attitude. That means the behavior changes but the attitude remains the same. That is nothing but the first variety of attitude change, which we say as what? Compliance. So compliance basically is nothing but क्या? जब हमारी public opinion, right, कुछ अलग होती है, we agree with some particular norm, social norm हो सकता है, वो समाज के द्वारा सेट की गई कोई tradition हो सकती है, it can be any kind of custom or practice जिसके साथ हमें agree करना पड़ता है to become what? A social animal. But privately we are not in accordance with that particular opinion or belief. That is known as what? Compliance. That means our attitude or our behavior would be influenced just by what? Compliance with some particular aspect. Then if we see the next form, that is identification. Identification is basically when you are influenced by someone who is liked or respected. That may be a celebrity or a popular or a favorite family member or a popular figure, right? उनसे आप इन्फ्लुएंस होके क्या होता है? आपके बिहेवियर में उस पर्टिकुलर चीज़ या ओपिनियन को लेके कोई चेंज आता है, बट बेसिकली इट मे और मे नॉट लीड टू एटीट्यूडिनल चेंज. तो इसमें हम ये नहीं बता सकते, क्योंकि जितना लाइकिंग या जितना रिस्पेक्ट होगा उस पर डिपेंड करेगा एटीट्यूडिनल चेंज, राइट? बट बिहेवियर ऑब्वियसली चेंजेस. यस, so that is nothing but what? Identification. When you start identifying yourself with someone else's thought, yes, thought process, that is nothing but the process of identification. Then third, if we see, what is internalization? Yes, internalization is what? Acceptance of a belief, of a behavior. How? Internally as well as externally. Internally you work on what? That is, internally or privately you are agreeing in what you are being told or opined, and the same you are agreeing to externally also. So that leads to what? Change in attitude, and obviously when your attitude changes, your behavior changes, right? So in these three different forms, what we see is compliance is when privately you disagree but publicly you agree. That leads to what? Behavioral change but not attitudinal change, right? Then next, if we see in identification, when you identify with some particular celebrity or a favorite family member, right, or a popular personality, your behavior changes in accordance with their actions, but your attitude may or may not change, right? And the third one is what? When your attitude towards attitude and behavior both change when you accept the belief or behavior internally, that is privately, and publicly, that is externally, right? So these are nothing but the different forms of what? Social influence. So now let us discuss what social influence actually is. सोशल इन्फ्लुएंस मतलब कि सामाजिक प्रभाव, इसका अर्थ होता है थॉट्स और एक्शंस ऑफ एन इंडिविजुअल. व्हेन thoughts or actions of an individual are affected consciously or unconsciously. देखिए यहाँ पे ये दोनों शब्द mentioned हैं, that is what consciously and unconsciously it may be so. हम अभी डिस्कस करते हैं कैसे, right? By whom? By a people or group of people, right? Why? And why is social influence so necessary to discuss in our syllabus? Because as a civil servant, it would be your duty to positively influence the masses which you are addressing. That is why we require to study this particular topic, right? So जब कभी भी thoughts or actions of an individual get what affected consciously or unconsciously by a people or a group of people, right? It may be an individual also. तब उसको क्या बोलते हैं? Social influence बोलते हैं. There are many forms. यहाँ पे the words that you are seeing in what green are nothing but what they are different ways through which social influence is possible. सबसे पहले the biggest social influencer today is nothing but advertising or marketing. Yes, the complete field of advertising or marketing depends on the idea of social influence. Then ethics, भाई ethics इसमें किस तरीके से आ सकता है? बिल्कुल, when you preach some ethical thing and if it influences, then it also becomes a form of social influence. इसी तरीके से interpersonal influences, ये क्या होता है? मान लीजिए आप किसी पॉपुलर फिगर से मिले, भाई आप किसी सिलेक्टेड आईएएस ऑफिसर से मिले और अचानक से आपका गोल बन गया कि यस नाउ आई आल्सो वांट टू क्रैक दिस एग्जाम, राइट? दिस मीन्स व्हाट? नथिंग बट इंटरपर्सनल इन्फ्लुएंसेस. देन मास मीडिया. यस, द मास मीडिया में देखिए सारी चीज़ें आ जाती हैं, ऑल काइंड ऑफ मीडिया फॉर्म्स, पेड मीडिया, यस, एवरीथिंग कम्स अंडर व्हाट? मास मीडिया. मास मीडिया इज अ वेरी इन्फ्लुएंशियल फॉर्म इन दी सोसाइटी. देन उसके बाद यहाँ पे देखेंगे पावर. Power, how can power influence? Power obviously influences because it has the authority to effectively implement their own willingness on others. That is why it can also be considered a form of social influence. इसी तरीके से social norms, right, superstitions, yeah, popular people or celebrities, they can also be forms of what? Social influence, right? Now if we see that what is persuasion and how these two things are connected. Persuasion means nothing but a form of social influence, right? कि the process of guiding people towards adoption of an idea, attitude or action by rational or logical means. देखिए यहाँ पे ये बहुत important है, rational or logical means लिखा है, right? Means when you kind of try to what? Influence a person, yes, for adoption of an idea, कि भाई any particular idea, it may be any particular attitude or action, yes, in how? In a logical and rational manner, yes, उसी को हम क्या बोलते हैं? persuasion बोलते हैं, persuading skills, yes. This basically relies on appeal and not on force. फोर्स के द्वारा हो उसे परसुएशन नहीं बोल सकते हैं, राइट? इट कैन नेवर बी, परसुएशन कैन नेवर बी कोएर्सिव इन नेचर. यू कैन जस्ट इन्फ्लुएंस द थॉट्स ऑफ एनी इंडिविजुअल, देयर एटीट्यूड और देयर बिहेवियर, बट यू कैन नॉट फोर्स टू अडॉप्ट देम योर ओन, right? That is nothing but persuasion. Now if we see what are the different methods of persuasion, are there any methods through which we can persuade people? Yes, if we broadly bifurcate them by appeal to reason, means if we give them some logical, some scientific reasons, yes, for adopting that particular idea, that is by the way of appeal to reason. If it can also be by appeal to emotion, like advertising, faith, traditions, right? इसमें कोई logic नहीं हो सकता है. Yes, it is only what? A science of persuasion. There can be many other techniques, जैसे हमने यहाँ पे underline की है, debate, peer pressure. Yes, debate is also, debate कौन सा पे belong करेगा? भाई debate is what? This first kind. Peer pressure is what? Yes, what kind of technique can be considered? It can be considered under second, under the appeal to emotion. Deception, देखिए deception is what? It will come under force, not by appeal. Power will also come under what? Force and not by appeal. The same way, brainwashing, mind control, hypnosis, all these are nothing but what? When you do not appeal but you force to do so, right? That can be considered as what forms of persuasion which are kind of availed through the force. Yes, so why is this topic important for our syllabus? See, in case studies you are going to use this in different steps that you take for resolving any particular ethical dilemma, right? When you would be asked, जब आपको पूछा जाएगा कि भाई किस तरीके से there is a mob in front of your office demanding something and that is a aggrieved mob, वो खुद बहुत परेशान लोग हैं, right? So the first tool at your end would be what? Social influence and persuasion. You should have the power to influence people with your personality. You should have the power to persuade people with your words. And this all starts right from your mains stage, right? That is why this particular topic of what social influence and persuasion is very, very important to us. Ab, how does government use these two things? Yes, देखिए सरकार की बहुत सारी इनिशिएटिव्स होती हैं, कुछ स्कीम्स होती हैं, राइट? स्कीम्स विच आर अबाउट शॉर्ट टर्म इन नेचर, जो कुछ सालों के लिए टारगेटेड होती है, एंड मिशंस आर व्हाट? दे आर विजनरी, लॉन्ग टर्म इन नेचर. व्हेन जनरली यू वांट टू हैव एन एटीट्यूडिनल चेंज, जिसमें आप चाहते हैं कि लोगों के स्वभाव में फर्क आए, लोगों के अभिवृत्ति में फर्क आए, उस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम पे आपको उसको मिशन फॉर्म में डालना पड़ता है, जैसे कि स्वच्छ भारत मिशन, right? So that needs what? That needs attitudinal change. It doesn't only need behavioral change, क्योंकि behavior में change कब आएगा? जब attitude में आएगा. और अगर आपने पहले दो फॉर्म्स में से किसी में चेंज किया है, राइट, सिर्फ बिहेवियरल में चेंज किया है, तो वो बहुत शॉर्ट लिव्ड होगा. इट कैन नॉट परसिस्ट. So for a permanent attitudinal change or behavioral change, it is necessary to bring a change in attitude. That is why these two topics are very, very important. इसी वजह से आपको ऐसा क्वेश्चन पूछा गया पास्ट में कि how can one use social influence and persuasion in the implementation of the स्वच्छ भारत मिशन. तो उसमें आपको वही तीन फॉर्म्स दिखाने थे कि किस तरीके से सरकार ने ये तीनों फॉर्म्स यूज किए, right? So this is how these topics which are belonging to a particular psychological series are very, very important to fetch marks. They are very technical in nature. इसमें ज़्यादा कोई कलाकारी की ज़रूरत नहीं है, right? We just simply understand them and we write down in simplified words. Yes. इसके बाद हमारी सीरीज का नेक्स्ट सेशन जो होगा that would be on emotional intelligence, which is the most favorite topic of UPSC as well as GPSC 1-2, right? हमेशा they try to put at least one question from that particular topic, right? So that would be the last topic of this particular psychological series. Yes, thank you.